When I first started struggling with anxiety, I didn't fully understand what was happening inside me. My thoughts felt heavy, my chest felt tight, and my mind was constantly racing between fear, overthinking, and uncertainty. I would think about the future, about things that might go wrong, about situations I could not control, and it felt like my mind never truly rested. Even in quiet moments, there was noise inside me. I realized that anxiety is not always loud on the outside, but it can be overwhelming on the inside. I tried to distract myself, to stay busy, to avoid thinking too much, but nothing truly brought me peace. That was when I slowly began to turn back to prayer, not just as a routine, but as a refuge. At first, my prayer was not perfect. My focus would drift, my thoughts would interrupt, and I would sometimes rush through it. But even in that imperfect state, I felt something different. I felt moments of calm, even if they were small. I began to realize that prayer is not just an obligation. It is a connection, a safe space, a moment where I can pause everything and just be with Allah. I started approaching prayer differently. Instead of seeing it as something I had to complete, I saw it as something I needed, something my heart was searching for. When I stood in prayer, I noticed how my breathing slowed down. I noticed how the movements, the stillness, the recitation created a rhythm that my body and mind began to follow. I realized that prayer naturally brings mindfulness. It pulls you away from the chaos of your thoughts and brings you into the present moment. When I said Allahu Akbar, I reminded myself that Allah is greater than anything I am worried about, greater than my fears, greater than my anxiety, greater than my uncertainty. That simple reminder began to shift my perspective. I started to reflect on the meaning of what I was reciting. I realized that every word in prayer carries comfort, guidance, and reassurance. When I recited verses about mercy, I felt hope. When I recited verses about guidance, I felt direction. When I bowed and prostrated, I felt humility, a release of pressure, a surrender of everything I was holding inside. I realized that sujud is one of the most powerful positions for anxiety because it is a moment where you place your worries down and lift your heart up. I began to make dua more intentionally. Instead of holding everything inside, I started speaking to Allah about my fears, my overthinking, my struggles. I learned that I don't need perfect words, I just need sincerity. I told Allah everything I was feeling, even the things I could not explain to anyone else. And slowly, I started to feel lighter. I realized that anxiety often comes from carrying too much alone, and prayer teaches you that you are never alone. I noticed that the more consistent I became with prayer, the more stable my emotions felt. My anxiety did not disappear instantly, but it became manageable. It no longer controlled me the way it used to. I realized that prayer does not always remove the problem, but it strengthens you to face it. It gives you clarity, patience, and emotional balance. I began to respond to situations more calmly. I began to think more clearly. I began to trust that everything happening in my life had a purpose. I discovered that prayer creates structure in your day, and that structure itself reduces anxiety. Knowing that I have moments in the day where I can pause, reset, and reconnect gave me something to hold on to. No matter how stressful the day felt, I knew I would return to prayer. It became my anchor. It became my reset button. It became my source of peace. I also realized that prayer builds trust in Allah. Anxiety often comes from trying to control everything, from fearing the unknown, from worrying about outcomes. But prayer reminds you that Allah is in control. It teaches you to do your best and leave the rest to Him. It teaches you that uncertainty is not something to fear, but something to trust Allah with. That mindset slowly transformed my anxiety into calm acceptance. There were moments when my anxiety was strong, when my thoughts were overwhelming, when I felt like I could not calm down. In those moments, I would go and pray, even if it was just two. And every time, I noticed a shift. Maybe not immediately, maybe not completely, but enough to remind me that I am not trapped in my anxiety. I realized that prayer is not about escaping reality, but about facing it with a stronger heart. I began to understand that prayer also trains emotional discipline. It teaches you patience, focus, and self-control. When your mind wanders and you bring it back, you are training your mind. When you feel overwhelmed and you still stand to pray, you are building strength. When you choose prayer over panic, you are choosing peace over chaos. I noticed that my relationship with anxiety changed. I no longer saw it as something that defines me, but something that I can manage, something that I can respond to with faith. I realized that anxiety is a test, and prayer is one of the greatest tools to navigate that test. It is a reminder that no matter how heavy your thoughts feel, your heart can always find relief in Allah. I also discovered that consistency matters more than perfection. Even on days when my prayer felt rushed or distracted, I still showed up. And that consistency created a habit of returning to Allah, again and again, no matter how I felt. Over time, those small consistent efforts built a strong foundation of calm, resilience, and faith. I began to feel a sense of peace that I had never experienced before. Not because life became perfect, but because my heart became stronger. I realized that true peace does not come from controlling everything around you, but from trusting the one who controls everything. Prayer became my safe place, my therapy, my comfort, my strength. I want every sister watching this to understand that if you are struggling with anxiety, you are not weak, you are not alone, and you are not broken. Your feelings are real, but they do not have to control you. Prayer can be your refuge. It can be the place where you release everything you are holding inside and replace it with peace, trust, and strength. Start small. Start with sincerity. Even if your mind is distracted, even if your heart feels heavy, just begin. Stand in prayer, speak to Allah, and allow yourself to feel that connection. Over time, you will notice the change. You will feel calmer, stronger, more grounded, more connected. I realized that prayer does not just reduce anxiety, it transforms the way you experience life. It shifts your mindset from fear to trust, from overthinking to surrender, from chaos to calm. It teaches you that no matter what you are going through, you always have a place to return to, a place where your heart can rest. And slowly, day by day, prayer became not just something I do, but something that carries me, supports me, and heals me. I realized that in every, there is relief, in every, there is hope, and in every prayer,